Hello good people, it's Rob Lee. Getting the truth out of the controlled media or the majority of video makers is like picking that shit out of pepper. It's just impossible. I'm going to show you some gaslighting, but before we talk about gaslighting, we need to talk about what the word means. Gaslighting. Now this word has become one of the most popular words on the entire internet. In fact, it is Merriam-Webster's word of the year for 2022. Millions of people did searches to look for what the word gaslighting meant. Now this word was first brought to life more than 80 years ago with a play called Gaslight, a 1938 play, and then in the 40s there were two films that were about gaslighting. However, most folks have no idea what gaslighting is, and they don't understand how it went from being relatively just unused for 80 years and then all of a sudden it's one of the most popular words in the English language today, because that's how things work when we have buzzwords. So are the propagandists behind this word the real gaslighters? For example, who comes to mind when you think about mind manipulation, grossly misleading, downright deceitful, and the worst liars in the history of the word? The word deep state is another clever way to hide, deflect, and conceal whom God calls the synagogue of Satan, Mystery Babylon, and quite frankly and very simply, the devil's children. But now we use such exotic names as the deep state. How about a lying, corrupt whore state? And that's what it is. The definition of gaslighting is this: an increasing frequency of systematically withholding factual information from and/or providing false information to the victim, the American people, having the gradual effect of making them anxious, confused, and less able to trust their own memory and perception. Now, this destroys the self-esteem of the people and makes them dependent upon the gaslighters to tell them what's real, what's factual, and most importantly, what's acceptable in the gaslighter's reality, because that's what it's all about. Gaslighters, which is a false light, making a new reality. When speaking of the insanity of the United States of America, one can look at many examples of the inmates running the asylum. Gaslighting is used to deceive the masses into living the lie and foregoing the truth in favor of a few crumbs of food and contaminated water from the oppressors they hold as their saviors. In a short amount of time, the people have allowed a new reality to be forged in them and around them, and this has become their world now. They don't know about anything that's real. They simply know about the little bubble they live in. They've been put there, and that's all they know. And anything else that could be true that might invade that bubble, they do not want it. There have been 2 civil wars in the last 370 years among white people. White people. I'm talking about Anglo white people. These 2 civil wars, I want to talk to you about 2 particular civil wars that changed the social landscape of white nations forever. They're not talked about. The first being the English Civil War. The second being the American Civil War. But it's what came after the wars that would forever alter the nations. And yet most are clueless as to what this was and how it relates to today. It has everything to do with it. The English Civil War lasted from 1642 until 1651. A scant 44 years later, the Bank of England was founded in 1695 by the Synagogue of Satan banking cartels, Mystery Babylon. This began the process of breaking the English people. Now, in the English Civil War, the King Charles, was murdered and a military tyrant was put on the throne. The deal was made by the tyrant Oliver Cromwell to allow the Synagogue of Satan to set up banking in England. You see, Cromwell needed money so he could continue fighting and so he could go into Ireland and invade Ireland for no reason. And he had to have money. And the Synagogue of Satan was there to give him that money. In return, they had to be allowed to come back to England because they had been kicked out. They lived there in the shadows. They were allowed to come back. And of course, they set up banking. And banking is what? Usury. And if you control the money, you can control the people. The American Civil War was from 1861 to 1865. The president was murdered, just like the King of England. Now, I'm not a fan of King Charles or Abraham Lincoln, but the parallels are striking. President Lincoln was murdered. and a military tyrant took his place just 3 years later. In 1913, 48 scant years later, the Federal Reserve was enacted and the destruction of the United States was underway. Now, both wars gave way to the banking cartels to set up shop in less than 50 years. So you do see what happened. Ulysses S. Grant, a military tyrant and a drunkard, was placed in the White House, and this was after that. You do see what happened here. The door was being opened for the synagogue of Satan to come into your country, when before there had been a door put up. It says, no, you're not welcome. You can't come in. If you come in, you have to come in secret. Both wars were to ever change white nations. And these two white nations, quite frankly, were the heart of all white nations, because this is where the power was. The Civil War flag of the southern states is the core of this gaslighting theme. The southern states flag has been assaulted, shredded, and removed all over this country. It's hard to purchase now. It's seen as an evil and hideous sign of oppression and slavery. This is one of the biggest lies in history. One of the grossest lies in history. The Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. And in a future video, we're going to talk about slavery in a way you never ever heard before. I guarantee it. It had to do with money. It had to do with the South becoming so prominent that it was going to break off and start to make deals with England and France and other nations on their own. This would have left the Union, the North, defunct. And they knew it. On the other side of the coin now we know that what's called the rebel flag is looked at as oppressive, and you must be a bad person if you believe in it, and if you wave it, and if you have it, it's bad and you're bad. On the other side of the coin, the same people who condemn the Southern States flag will hail the hexagram flag as being special and from God. They call it David's star. This is a lie from the deepest recesses of hell. It is a hexagram used for nothing less than sorcery. God himself, the Almighty Father, condemned this hideous mark, this six-pointed star. It is God who condemned it in Amos 5:26 and Acts 7:43. God called it the star of Moloch and Remphan, which are other names of the devil. God also condemned the people who today wave this flag and call it theirs. He called them the children of the devil in John 8:44, and the synagogue of Satan in Revelations 2:9 and 3:9. In Matthew 23:15, he blamed them for every bit of righteous blood shed upon this earth. That flag is regarded as great. The Southern States flag is regarded as awful, oppressive, when it's just the opposite. The first flag, we're fighting oppression. The flag with the six-pointed star is a symbol of your oppressors. This is a glaring example of how far this nation and Western culture has fallen. Another example of gaslighting is the argument about the so-called LGBTQ754, whatever. It's got so many, this lie. It's a sin. The moment you open your mouth to debate the subject, you have lost. You have lost. Why would you debate anybody about something that you know God has condemned? You see, you cannot acknowledge something that God condemns, calls a lie, and an abomination. Sodomy. God Almighty destroyed 2 cities for sodomy. You cannot lie. You cannot argue, folks, with liars about their own filth and lies. You cannot argue with liars about their own filth and lies. You give their argument merit by taking the time to argue. Many do this and they end up giving ground or slightly compromising. Slightly compromising the truth is the same as giving up the truth for the lie. This is what America has done. Let me say it again for you. Slightly compromising the truth, even in a minuscule way, is the same as giving up the truth for the lie. This is what America has done. This is what the people have done. The same can be said about aliens, UFOs, dinosaurs, and all of the gaslighting to make the people doubt any form of truth so they will walk in darkness. What is darkness? Darkness is without the light of Jesus Christ. Where did Jesus Christ come from? He came from the God, from the one true God. He said, I've come to do the will of my Father, which is your Father. They want the people to walk in darkness. Their darkness. What is darkness? You don't know where you're going. You can't see. You don't know the truth. Why do these people behave this way? Because the gaslighters are just a tool for those that hate God, Jesus, and their family in this earth. They hate God's truth because God, Jesus, and the Holy Word condemns them forever. There is no way of escaping it except to lie and deceive. There can be no middle ground with what we know as the truth. We counter their false light, their gaslighting, with the true light. And as we close, I share the truth that comes from the only source of perfect truth. I share with you the words of Jesus the Christ in the Gospel of John, 3 verses that tell it all. John 8:12 says, Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. John 12:46, I am come a light into the world, that whosoever believeth on me shall not abide in darkness. And then in a conversation that Jesus Christ was having with the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, as he was getting ready to be crucified by the Jews, Pilate said this to Jesus. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice. Every one that is of the truth hears the words of Jesus. And when you hear the truth, you follow the truth. And the truth is who? Jesus. Thank you for watching.